Welcome to the lecture on individual level control theories. Let's get started. Emily Durkheim once said that, quote, "The more weakened the groups to which the individual belongs, the less he depends on them. The more he consequently depends only on himself and recognizes no other rules of conduct than what are founded on his private interests," unquote. Control theories assume that delinquent acts result from when an individual's bond to society is either weak or broken. Since these theories embrace two highly complex concepts, that being the bond of the individual to society, so bond and society being a highly complex concepts, it is not surprising that these theories at one time or another have formed the basis of explanations of most forms of odd or unusual behavior. It is also not surprising that control theories have described the elements of the bond to society in many ways, and that they have focused on a variety of units as the point of control, or a variety of different elements of society as the point through which control of society and control of individuals is managed. Most theories start off with the idea that it is normal for people to follow the law and only rare individuals want to break the law. However, control theories take the opposite approach. They assume that if it wasn't for laws and other norms in society, people would do terrible things due to the power, excitement, or benefits that they would achieve from doing these terrible things. This idea is rooted in Durkheim and his thoughts on the bond individuals form with and to society. Durkheim's bond has four different elements: attachment, commitment, involvement, and belief. And all four of these elements of the bond are important in social control theory. Typically, in explaining attachment, sociologists have emphasized sensitivity to the opinion of others. However, sociologists have tended to suggest that individuals who are sensitive to the opinion of others thus exclude sensitivity from their explanations of deviant behavior. In explaining deviant behavior, psychologists, in contrast, have emphasized insensitivity to the opinion of others. So sociologists have emphasized sensitivity to others, the opinion of others, but have excluded it from their explanations of deviant behavior. But psychologists have emphasized insensitivity to the opinion of others. Psychologists have also tended to ignore variation and, in addition, tie sensitivity to other variables. So psychologists have made it part of a syndrome or a quote-unquote type, and thus have seriously reduced its value as an explanatory concept. Consequently, psychologists explain psychopaths as characterized only in part by quote-unquote deficient detachment or affection for others. They also talk about psychopaths by such things as, quote, aggressiveness or excessive aggressiveness, lack of respect for others, and lack of superego control. these are all things that are used to define psychopathy. In the words of one psychologist, quote, "The psychopath is, without shame or qualification, a model circular process or a model tautological process by which mental abnormality is inferred from antisocial behavior, where antisocial behavior is explained by mental abnormality." Unquote. The problem of diagnosis, tautology, and name-calling can be avoided if the dimensions of psychopathy are treated as causally and therefore problematically interrelated, rather than logical and therefore necessarily related to each other. Attachment, therefore, or lack thereof, is not merely a symptom of psychopathy. Really, it is being psychopathic. Lack of conscience is just another way of saying the same thing. And violation of norms then may be a consequence. The lack of internalization of norms or having a conscience thus can lie in the attachment of the individual to others or lack thereof. Changes or variation in behavior can thus be explained in a way that it is not when notions of internalization of the superego are used, but rather when a number of deviant acts have been committed. For example, one is more likely after a divorce to commit deviant acts such as suicide because one's internal control has already been lost through divorce, and thus one is more likely to commit crime. Consequently, if one remarries, one has to conclude that such things like suicide are more likely to not happen because one is less likely to commit other non-deviant acts by getting married again. The next of the four important elements is commitment. One can think about being committed to conformity. In being committed to conformity, the individual is in a position in which their decision to regard a particular line of action has consequences for their other interests and activities. They've placed themselves in a position in line with their own prior actions, and they think of this as somewhat apparent. The committed person has to be aware of their interests, and they must recognize their decision, or all of their decisions, has ramifications beyond their initial decision. So ramifications have consequences down the road. This falls in line with the fact that the individual's position that they are currently in is due to their prior actions.
Let's look at one of the other key concepts in control theory, belief. Control theory assumes the existence of a common value system that underlies the norms and laws that a society has. And these are what gets violated in control theory when people commit crime. So this means that there is enough cohesion in society to agree to standards of behavior as to what constitutes normal behavior, and often that is codified as legal behavior, though not all the time, and what is non-normal behavior, which is often codified, but not all the time, as illegal behavior. Overall, he or she has stated that social control theory is not concerned with beliefs that cause delinquency, but rather the absence of beliefs that stop or forbid delinquency from occurring. So we're looking at how are beliefs that an individual holds more lenient, allowing what a society at large regards as illegal behavior. Hirschi, in some of the first research on control theory, found an inverse relationship between beliefs that indicated respect for police and delinquent behavior. In other words, as people indicated that they had less respect for police, they indicated that they did more delinquent behavior as defined by Hirschi. So again, this was looking at like how Hirschi defined respect for the police, belief in respect for the police as a concept, and reported delinquent behavior as defined by Hirschi. This is also to say that control theory is very constructivist, and what I mean by that is that how things are defined, what we say as this indicates a lack of respect for police, how we measure it on surveys, really matters. How it is constructed, what we say indicates lack of respect for police, the questions we ask to get at that concept really matters. That's what I mean by constructivist here. Relatedly, Hirschi used a series of questions to measure what is termed as techniques of neutralization. Techniques of neutralization is a concept defined by Sykes and Matza in the 1950s. And although it is a concept that's now almost 70 years old, it's still very pertinent to discussions of criminality. And so that means that it's really important to understand, and you should take notes on it here. This is also often discussed as techniques that are favorable to violations of the law or law breaking. These include denial of responsibility. In other words, I didn't do it, somebody else did it. Denial of injury. In other words, this isn't a crime, this isn't a problem, no one was hurt, no one was injured, no damage was done. Denial of the victim. Johnny couldn't have suffered, he has lots of money. My company didn't notice the money I took from it, it made $4 million last year. That's what we mean by denial of victim. And condemnation of the condemners. That last one is condemnation of the condemners. It's a mouthful. But what it means is that society has no right to judge me because many people in society do bad things themselves. Saying the judge had no reason to convict me of traffic violations. I was coming in behind him to court today, and I noticed that he had 2 rolling stops. So he shouldn't pass judgment on my driving ability. That's an example of condemnation of the condemners. So again, those 4 techniques of neutralization are denial of responsibility, denial of injury, denial of victim, and condemnation of the condemners. So looking a little bit more about control theories and belief violations, control theories say that individuals break their beliefs for one of 2 reasons. One, they say that beliefs are only words, they're only ideas that people have constructed in their head, and they have really little control over people if other forms of control are not in place. So if there aren't people watching your behavior, really your beliefs in what's wrong or right aren't going to prevent you from doing anything. The other reason that control theories say that individuals break their beliefs is that deviants rationalize their behavior so they can violate the rule and simultaneously maintain their belief in it. And this is where the techniques of neutralization come in. When they mean rationalize their behavior, they are referring to things like denying responsibility, denying injury, denying that there is a victim, and condemning the condemners. Going back to the question about have you ever violated your own beliefs, when whatever it was that you thought of where you had violated your beliefs, when that happened, did the reason align with either of the 2 reasons that are noted on the slide above? Think about it. We should also say a little bit, although this is some interesting concepts, when belief has been measured in research, it's often been done very problematically. So, for example, when he or she measured respect for the police, he did so using a single question on a survey. And when he measured respect for the law, he also did it using a single question on a survey. What I think most people would agree upon is that whatever a belief is, it's a pretty complex thought. or alignment to an idea. And when we ask, do you respect police, or do you respect laws, or do you respect the law, that most people have a lot of thoughts on any of those questions. And a simple question on a survey that asks you to say, like, do you respect the law? Yes or no. Probably doesn't capture all the complexities of a person's answer to that question. Which is to say that if we can measure belief via survey questions, for example, we definitely need more than one question to measure people's complex beliefs. Underneath the concepts of control theory was the idea that humans are moral human beings, and this stemmed from the work of Emily Durkheim. Durkheim said that morality stemmed from three possible sources: the family, the nation, and humanity. By the family, Durkheim meant especially the mother and father. By the nation, he meant political leaders. It is unclear what else he meant by the nation. And the definition of humanity generally was very vague. So many of these concepts are not well defined, and this did not stop Durkheim from saying that the nation was the most important concept in establishing morality. You may want to stop right here and think about your own morality and your own morals and think, well, was the nation the most important factor in influencing what your morals are? Or was it your parents, or your grandparents, or a sibling, or your church, synagogue, mosque, temple? Was it your friends? So question that part of Durkheim's thoughts. Criminologists have looked at this and thought, well, as far as controlling delinquency, what was most important? And when we say controlling delinquency, in control theory, what we mean is which of these are most important in establishing beliefs in a human being that do not allow them to commit behavior that has been defined as delinquent by society. Is it the parents that are most important in making sure that people have beliefs that do not allow them to perpetuate behavior defined as delinquent by society? Is the nation that makes sure that people do not have delinquent beliefs that allow them to commit delinquent acts as defined by society? Or is it humanity generally that makes sure that people have beliefs that do not allow them to commit delinquent acts as defined by society? Control theories don't have an answer to that question of which of those elements is most important in making sure that people don't have beliefs that allow them to commit acts that have been defined as delinquent by society. Before we end, just a little note on the impact of control theories on public policy in the United States. Social control theory has argued that juveniles are less likely to engage in delinquent behavior when they are more attached to others and are more involved in conventional activities, and when they have more to lose from committing crime. and when they have stronger beliefs in the moral validity of the law. All of these have affected the development of programs meant to decrease juvenile participation in criminal and other forms of delinquent activity. These policies have included support for after-school programs, including funding and development of after-school programs, curfew laws, so places where, for example, people who are under 16 can't be out over 10 p.m., and have also contributed to the development of programs meant to facilitate youth having job opportunities. So example, summer job programs put on by city governments that make sure that youth have job mentors and start participating in the economic system. Self-control theories have resulted in different policies. These policies have included ones that promote and facilitate two-parent families or make it harder for parents to get divorced in order to ensure two-parent families. It has also resulted in policies meant to prevent pregnancy among adolescents. Self-control theory has also resulted in programs that target dysfunctional families and seek to remedy any lack of supervision of especially young children. And self-control theory has argued that policies that allow for rehabilitation or incapacitation of adult offenders should be abandoned, and that aggressive police tactics, such as drug stings, actually create opportunities for offenders to commit crime and thus should be abandoned as well. So that's just a little bit on the policy impact of self-control and social control theories. If you have any questions, please let me know. Thanks and have a good week.